They're coming home, all of them. Imagine hearing that at a rally, the promise echoing through a packed stadium. Jobs, industry, manufacturing, right back to the United States. It's the kind of vision that makes every factory worker, every engineer, every community reliant on manufacturing sit up and pay attention. President Donald Trump made it clear. Tariffs would be the tool to pull production back to American soil. Build abroad, pay more, come home and you're rewarded. Simple, powerful, and bold. It's a plan designed to reshape American industry and put the heart of manufacturing back where it belongs. But here's the tension. The reality didn't line up with the promise. Jobs weren't rushing back to Detroit, Toledo, or Cleveland. Instead, the consequences of these tariffs began to unfold in ways no one fully anticipated. Factories in the United States faced rising costs, while neighboring Canada quietly became the beneficiary of decisions originally meant to favor America. This isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. It's a high-stakes battle over livelihoods, communities, and the future of one of America's most iconic industries. And as we'll see, what was meant to be a victory for the United States ended up revealing a complex, ironic twist in the North American trade story. So how were these tariffs supposed to work? The idea was simple. Make it expensive to build abroad, and suddenly building in the United States becomes the smarter choice. Steel, aluminum, copper. If you imported them, you'd pay extra. If you stayed in America, you'd avoid those costs. In theory, factories would move back, and American jobs would flourish. By 2025, the stakes had risen dramatically. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper hit 50%, and Canadian non-USMCA goods faced a 35% duty. Even countries like India saw steep increases, up to 50% in certain sectors. The goal was clear: protect domestic industries, pressure trading partners, and force production back to American soil. But here's the catch. Trade policy doesn't happen in a vacuum. U.S. plants weren't just facing foreign competition. They had labor challenges, infrastructure bottlenecks, and rising operational costs. Retooling or expanding facilities was slow, expensive, and risky. Suddenly, a strategy designed to strengthen the U.S. auto sector was showing cracks. This sets up the central conflict. Trump's tariffs aimed to bring jobs home, but the complexity of modern supply chains, rising costs, and market realities meant that policy could backfire. The question now, who would actually benefit? That's where real-world decisions, like Ford's Oakville move, start to tell the story. Long before the 2025 tariffs even hit, Ford was making big moves driven by market realities, not politics. In January 2024, the company announced a $3 billion investment to transform its Oakville plant in Ontario, Canada. Originally planned to produce electric vehicles, the facility would now pivot to building the Ford Superduty pickup trucks starting in 2026. Why Oakville? Ford's U.S. plants in Kentucky and Ohio were already stretched to capacity. Expanding them would be slow, expensive, and risky. In contrast, Oakville offered a modern facility, cheap and abundant hydroelectric power, a skilled workforce with fewer strike risks, and strong government support to streamline the transition. For Ford, it was simply the smart business choice to meet demand for large trucks, which remained strong while EV demand slowed globally. This pivot highlights a critical lesson. Sometimes the market, not political pressure, dictates where production goes. Ford's Oakville decision set the stage for a dramatic irony. A choice made to maximize efficiency and meet customer demand would later become a shield against the very tariffs designed to punish Canada. Here we see strategy versus expectation. Ford wasn't responding to Trump's trade policies. It was anticipating the market. But the upcoming tariffs would turn that calculated business move into a story with surprising consequences. Then came August 2025. President Trump raised tariffs on Canadian goods outside USMCA from 25% to 35%, and steel, aluminum, and copper imports faced punishing 50% levies. The goal was simple: make it too expensive to build anywhere but the United States. But reality didn't follow the script. Ford's Oakville plant, already set up to build Superduty trucks, became a safe haven from the tariff storm. What was supposed to pressure production back to the United States now benefited Canada. Suddenly, Canada had a massive advantage: modern facilities, stable labor, and lower energy costs, while U.S. plants struggled with rising material prices, labor challenges, and slow retooling. Across Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky, Auto factories groaned under the weight of the tariffs. Costs surged, timelines stretched, and production became more complicated. Meanwhile, Canada quietly positioned itself as a hub for industrial growth, without even trying to outmaneuver U.S. policy. This twist sets up a dramatic irony. A policy designed to bring jobs home ended up highlighting the vulnerabilities of American industry, while Canada gained a surprising advantage. The stage was set for the next chapter, Canada's quiet victory and the boom in jobs and production north of the border. By 2026, the Oakville plant will be rolling out tens of thousands of Ford Superduty trucks every year. The $2.3 billion investment isn't just a number on a balance sheet, it's 1,800 direct jobs and thousands more in supporting supply chains. Local suppliers, from metal fabricators to parts manufacturers, are gearing up to meet this surge in demand, creating a ripple effect across Ontario. Meanwhile, American plants are facing a stark contrast. In Detroit, Toledo, and Cleveland, factories are squeezed by higher costs, labor issues, and slower production. Layoffs and uncertainty loom as tariffs make raw materials more expensive and reduce competitiveness. Communities that once counted on steady auto jobs now watch opportunities move north of the border. The lesson is clear: market-driven decisions can sometimes outperform political strategy. Ford's Oakville pivot, made for efficiency and demand reasons, has turned Canada into a quiet winner in the North American auto landscape. Jobs, growth, and industrial activity that were intended to return to the U.S. have instead flourished in Canada, setting up a broader discussion about how tariffs and market forces interact. While Canada thrives, the story south of the border is a cautionary tale. With steel and aluminum tariffs at 50%, analysts estimate that the average U.S.-built vehicle now carries nearly $5,000 in additional costs. For automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, these tariffs translate into tens of billions of dollars in lost profits, money that either comes out of margins or gets passed directly to consumers. For everyday Americans, the impact is immediate. Higher sticker prices mean that the car you were planning to buy may suddenly be thousands of dollars more expensive. Entry-level models are squeezed out, options are limited, and the rollout of new technologies, especially electric vehicles, slows. PACCAR, a major U.S. truck manufacturer, reported an added $75 million in expenses for just one quarter due to these tariffs. GM's profits fell by $1 billion. Stellantis lost $2.7 billion in the first half of 2025. This isn't just numbers on paper, it's communities feeling the pinch. Families pay more for vehicles, dealers face shrinking margins, and local economies tied to auto production struggle. What was intended to protect American industry is now, paradoxically, increasing costs and limiting growth. The tension is clear. Tariffs meant to bring jobs home are straining the very consumers and manufacturers they were designed to help, setting the stage for a deeper look at Canada's strategic advantages. Canada's advantage isn't limited to trucks and factories. The country holds a quietly powerful position in energy and critical minerals, resources the U.S. can't simply replace overnight. In 2024, Canada exported nearly 35.7 terawatt-hours of electricity to the United States, enough to power almost 1 million American homes. Much of this comes from cheap, clean hydropower in northern provinces, making it not just abundant but reliable. Then there are the critical minerals. Canada supplied roughly 27% of U.S. uranium imports in 2023, and its reserves of nickel, cobalt, and potash are essential for electric vehicles, batteries, and agriculture. While the U.S. scrambles to reduce dependency on China for processing, Canada offers a politically stable, geographically close alternative. Tariffs might squeeze certain industries, but they can't unplug power lines or redirect mineral supply overnight. This leverage gives Canada a quiet but profound advantage. While U.S. tariffs try to pressure Canadian industries, Canada holds resources that are essential for modern energy, transportation, and manufacturing. In essence, the country isn't just surviving the trade war, it's strengthening its position in ways tariffs can't touch, highlighting a long-term strategic edge. The unfolding events between the United States and Canada highlight a fundamental lesson. Tariffs alone can't force industries to behave the way politicians want. Slapping a 50% duty on imported steel, aluminum, and copper might sound like a surefire way to bring jobs back to American soil. In theory, higher costs abroad should make domestic production more attractive. But reality is far messier. If U.S. factories are already operating at maximum capacity, workers are scarce, and retooling a plant takes months or even years. Tariffs do little to create jobs, they just raise costs. Ford's Oakville plant is a perfect example of this dynamic. In 2024, Ford chose to invest $3 billion in Oakville to pivot from EVs to Superduty trucks. Not to dodge tariffs, but to meet real market demand. When Trump's tariffs hit in 2025, this decision became an unintentional shield. Canada gained a competitive advantage, while U.S. factories faced skyrocketing material costs, labor bottlenecks, and delayed production. The very policy designed to bring manufacturing home ended up highlighting the limits of using tariffs as a blunt economic tool. Trade policy works best when paired with preparedness. Infrastructure must be modern, supply chains must be flexible, and labor must be ready and skilled. Otherwise, even the largest tariffs can become self-defeating. The U.S. auto sector shows this clearly. Detroit and other industrial hubs are grappling with higher costs, slower production, and declining margins, even as Canadian plants thrive under the same global market pressures. There's also a lesson about timing and foresight. Market realities often move faster than politics. Decisions like Ford's Oakville investment demonstrate how companies anticipate demand, energy costs, and workforce stability long before political decisions land. Ignoring these signals can make policies look harsh, counterproductive, or even a bit ironic. Finally, this episode reveals the importance of strategy over force. Tariffs are a tool, not a solution. They can create pressure, but without careful planning, they risk hurting consumers, manufacturers, and entire communities. In contrast, Canada's market-driven approach, coupled with strategic investments, shows how thoughtful preparation can turn potential disruption into growth and opportunity. In short, the lesson is clear. Economics, logistics, and strategy often trump political messaging. The Oakville example isn't just about trucks. It's a microcosm of why tariffs can backfire if they're not supported by infrastructure, labor readiness, and a real understanding of the market. And this insight leads directly into Canada's next move, using diplomacy and strategic resets to turn challenges into long-term advantages. Canada didn't just sit back as U.S. tariffs ramped up. It responded with strategy and diplomacy. In late August 2025, Ottawa announced a tariff reset. Some retaliatory measures against U.S. goods were lifted, but Canada kept pressure on strategic sectors like steel, aluminum, and autos. This wasn't retreat, it was calculated. By easing tension in areas less critical while protecting sectors where U.S. dependence was strongest, Canada preserved leverage without escalating the conflict. Prime Minister Mark Carney also focused on diversifying trade beyond the U.S., particularly in Europe. Meetings with leaders in Germany, Poland, and Latvia highlighted Canada's role as a secure supplier of energy, minerals, and manufactured goods. By building alliances and opening new trade routes, Ottawa signaled that it had options. Canada wasn't cornered by American tariffs. This approach contrasts sharply with Trump's strategy of high-pressure disruption. While tariffs were designed to force concessions quickly, Canada's reset emphasized stability, fairness, and long-term planning. Companies could continue to operate, investments could move forward, and Canada maintained its position as a reliable partner in global supply chains. In essence, Canada turned a potential vulnerability into a strength. Through diplomacy, strategic tariff adjustments, and careful alignment with international partners, the country showed that smart negotiation and preparation can outweigh blunt economic pressure, setting up a resilient path for the future. Back in Michigan, the heart of America's auto industry, the impact of Trump's tariffs is, well, pretty hard to ignore. General Motors reported a $1 billion profit drop in the second quarter of 2025, citing new import taxes as a major factor. Stellantis lost $2.7 billion in the first half of the year, and analysts expect Ford to report similar strains. Rising costs are squeezing margins, forcing companies to rethink production, and in some cases, even cutting jobs. Steel, aluminum, and imported components now carry steep tariffs, inflating costs across the supply chain. Vehicles labeled Made in the U.S. often rely on dozens of foreign-sourced parts, meaning that even domestic factories face the burden of international tariffs. The result? Prices at the dealership rise, consumers face fewer options, and U.S. plants struggle to stay competitive. Industry experts warn that if these tariffs remain in place, U.S. vehicle production could drop by 11% by 2026. That's not just numbers. It's thousands of jobs, entire communities, and decades of industrial rebuilding at risk. Workers and suppliers alike feel the squeeze, and Detroit's once booming auto sector now faces an uncertain future. This mounting pressure really underscores the irony of the situation. Policies designed to bring jobs home may actually be undermining the very industry they were intended to protect. Meanwhile, Canada continues to benefit from strategic foresight and market-driven investments. The impact of tariffs isn't limited to big auto plants. Smaller Canadian industries are also reaping unexpected benefits. Take Quebec's food can manufacturing sector, for example. Before the tariffs, these companies relied heavily on American imports for steel cans. Once tariffs made U.S. goods more expensive, domestic sourcing suddenly became the smarter choice. Sales more than doubled within months, and new facilities in Windsor and Hamilton are being built to handle increased demand. By 2028, these plants aim to produce over 1 billion cans annually and create more than 100 new jobs. Even seemingly small industries reveal the larger lesson policies meant to punish Canada are actually spurring domestic growth. Steel finishing, once done south of the border, is returning to Hamilton, creating new opportunities for skilled workers. Local supply chains are expanding, training programs are ramping up, and communities that weren't previously industrial hubs are now seeing tangible economic benefits. This micro-level story mirrors the macro reality. Just as Ford's Oakville plant became a symbol of market-driven advantage, small Canadian businesses are turning trade friction into growth. It's a reminder that the effects of tariffs ripple far beyond headline industries, sometimes in ways no one intended. Looking at the big picture, the story of U.S. tariffs and Canada's response offers powerful lessons about economics, strategy, and global trade. Trump's approach relied on disruption, steep tariffs designed to pressure partners into immediate concessions. But disruption alone can't create jobs or secure industrial growth. Without infrastructure, labor readiness, and market-aligned decisions, policies risk backfiring, as we've seen with U.S. auto plants struggling under rising costs. Canada, on the other hand, turned challenges into opportunity. By combining market-driven investments like Ford's Oakville plant with strategic diplomacy and selective tariff resets, Ottawa strengthened domestic industries, diversified trade partnerships, and preserved leverage in critical sectors such as steel, aluminum, autos, electricity, and minerals. This isn't luck. It's a calculated strategy that balances immediate pressures with long-term stability. The contrast is striking. U.S. policy emphasizes short-term pressure, hoping to force immediate change. Canada emphasizes steady preparation, market awareness, and measured negotiation. The result? One country faces rising costs, layoffs, and shrinking competitiveness. The other gains jobs, industrial growth, and strengthened global ties. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. Strategy and foresight matter more than raw economic force. Trade policy is a chess game, not a hammer. Understanding market dynamics, preparing infrastructure, and building alliances can turn external pressure into domestic advantage. The stakes are high, the consequences real, and the lessons extend far beyond North America. Trump promised to bring American jobs home. Yet today, one of America's most iconic trucks, the Ford Superduty, will be built proudly in Canada. It's a striking irony, but it's also a clear example of how trade policy, market forces, and strategic decision-making intersect in ways no single tariff can fully control. Canada has shown that careful planning, infrastructure readiness, and market insight can turn pressure into opportunity, from industrial pivots like Oakville to thriving small businesses in Quebec. From energy exports powering nearly 1 million U.S. homes to critical minerals feeding the EV and battery sectors, Ottawa holds quiet but powerful leverage. Meanwhile, the U.S. faces rising costs, production challenges, and communities feeling the immediate impact of tariffs intended to protect them. The story doesn't end here. It's a lesson for governments, businesses, and consumers alike. Trade policy is complex, and the consequences ripple far beyond politics. Energy security, industrial growth, and global supply chains are all at stake. So, the next time you hear promises of bringing jobs home, remember this story. Look beyond the headlines. Consider strategy, preparation, and the unseen forces shaping industries and economies. Because in the battle of tariffs, markets, and geopolitics, the winners are often those who plan, adapt, and play the long game.